Pokemon Uranium might be the most notorious and well-known fan project to this day. From being struck down by Game Freak a couple of years ago, to adding an entire new type called Nuclear. I know a lot of you people love this game, and today we're going to try and hardcore Nuzlocke it. So we'll be working with permadeaths, level caps, you can only capture the first Pokemon in each round, and items are not allowed in battle. This game also introduces over 100 new Fakemon, some of them derpy, but other ones absolutely goated. So what are we waiting for? Let's clear out the nuclear waste and Nuzlocke our way through the Tandor region. We get greeted by Professor Bambo, or maybe Bamboo, who seems like a very cool professor and reminds me a lot of Kukui. At the start you can pick between 3 characters, and I go with the middle one because I think it has the coolest design. And then we get the prologue of everything that happened in the Tandor region across all those years we were alive. 10 years ago, me and my family used to live in Beale Beach City, the largest city in the Tandor region. My father, Kellen, was a brave and talented Pokemon Ranger, and my mother, Lucille, was a brilliant scientist and an expert on nuclear energy. The Tandor region was at peace at this time, and my mother's company was working on a form of clean energy that would change the world forever. The future seemed very bright, but then on an ordinary day at the nuclear power plant where my mother was working, an anomaly happened. The temperature readings of the power plant were far higher than normal, and it turns out the power plant was leaking an enormous amount of heat. That's when they realized that there must have been a breach in the reactor. Then the alarm goes off and everybody starts evacuating except for my mom. Cameron shouts at her to get outside, but she runs to the deepest parts of the power plant instead. She was never seen again after that day, and the power plant became uninhabitable and unvisitable because of all the radiation that was hanging around there. The loss of my mother also changed my father's life and his personality. He basically had no time for me anymore and poured all of his efforts into his work, causing him to be promoted to chief of the Tandor Pokemon Rangers, and in return losing the connection with his only child. Now 10 years later, I live with my auntie and I'm about to embark on my very first Pokemon journey with the help of Professor Bambo. We wake up on our first day, go downstairs and talk to auntie. She knows this is my big day, but also a big day for my neighbor Theo, a little guy who's also the son of Cameron, one of the scientists that worked with my mother. So she sees us off by handing us our running shoes and sending us out into Moki Town. And even though this game is 8 years old by now, I think the sprite work is absolutely beautiful. I love running around in the Tandor region, and I'm just going to say that this game absolutely holds up to this day. Just before we enter the lab, we run into Theo, who says that he's going to be first so that he can pick the better Pokemon, and that we're going to have to try and keep up with him. But upon entering, the professor doesn't even get Theo's name right. He calls him Tommy instead, and he throws a little hissy fit after that. We're here because the professor needs field research assistance so that he can study more Pokemon. Here you can't really choose your own Pokemon, you have to fill out a couple of questions, and based upon your answers, your Pokemon will be given to you. But it's really easy because if you want the water type, just select the water type questions. If you want the fire type, fire, grass, grass. I remember in my first ever playthrough of this game, I went with the fire type and I really liked him, so I'm going with Raptorch once again. And after giving my fire ground type Raptor the nickname Talon, it was time for Theo to choose his starter. He turned out with a grass steel type Urchinx, which as you may know is 4 times weak to fire, so with just one move we destroy it. And Theo starts crying because he got the worst Pokemon and really does start behaving like a little kid. Maybe he is too young to go on his first Pokemon journey, but let's hope he turns into a great trainer and grows out of this phase. We try to comfort him, but it doesn't work out, and he runs out while crying his eyes out and runs to his dad's house. He asks me what I did to his son because he ran upstairs crying and locked the door. So after explaining to him that his son is just a little bitch, he shouts at him and tells him to just grow up and be a better trainer. It's not because of his starter, he just needs to build a team around it that can beat mine. Theo understands and is going to try and be better in the future, so we all meet back up with the professor, who shows us how to capture a Pokemon and hands us his balls. Since I can only capture the first Pokemon in each area, I grab a Chienmunk here and call him Alvin for obvious reasons. He's just a regular normal type now, now, so not that impressive. As we battle our way through this new region, you're going to see a lot of new Pokemon, and I would love to know what your favorite one was at the end of the video. So don't forget to leave it in the comments. On the next round, I grabbed the regional bird Burby, which is not to be confused with the hit movie Barbie. With Peppy by my side, I reach the next town easily and go into the Pokemon Center, realizing that there is a GTS as well as a Wonder Trading feature in this game. And Wonder Trading is always good in my book. On the next round, I grab an Ursaring that looks like a bug, and after that I enter a cave where I capture Tez the Dunsparce, and this might not be something you are excited about, but Dunsparce actually has an evolution in this game, so I'm pretty excited about it. I also ran into a Boschhound, a fighting dark type that's really good, and I'm just praying to God that I get one for this run as well. Shortly after we reach Notorious City, a very enlightened place, and I mean that literally. Look at the amount of street lamps. And the city also has a gym, so we go up to it, but there's a guy standing in front of it saying that the gym leader is not here and that she's probably sleeping inside of her house. This creep also has her house key and has multiple copies of it, so he's gladly handing one of them over to us. So we go and check out her house because that's what you do when somebody locks their door, and technically break in, I guess. She wakes up shocked, saying, "What are you doing in my house? How did you even get in? Who gave you this key?" We explain everything to her, and she says that that guy is a stalker and a creep. So she goes over to the gym to scold at him and tell him to leave her alone. This is also where we find out that this guy is a huge fan of her because he used to be the former champion of the Tandor region, but has now retired and become a gym leader instead. She tells me to come and challenge her, but first I capture a Berull, a rock steel type that just looks incredibly derpy and cute. We also get the Rock Smash HM from one of the rangers who helped us out with one of the wild Pokemon by clearing out some rocks, and our Ursaring evolved into a bug flying type named Cubfly. And now it's time to challenge Maria, the normal type specialist. Although she might not be that special because she only got 3 Pokemon. Who I match up with Peppy, and after spamming Gust and Quick Attacks for a couple of turns, we win the battle of the normal flying types. But because we took major damage from Quick Attacks here, I swapped out into Talon after Felling came out, immediately taking a critical hit scratch, which does about half of my health. If it gets another crit, we're dead, but luckily for us, it just went for Growl, and we could Ember twice to bring out the evolved form Phalunge, which is also her final Pokemon. I bring in Ursaring and start charming away so that it doesn't do as much damage anymore, but it's really obsessed with wanting to put my Pokemon to sleep as it uses Yawn every other turn. So I'm basically stuck swapping into other Pokemon while trying to chip down at this oversized cat. In the end, it was a really close battle between Ursaring and Phalunge, but my final tackle won me the normal badge and the TM for return. I try to head back into the cave that we came from, but Theo stops me. He thinks that we tried to take on the gym leader but must have lost. But then we just flash him our gym badge and he's like, "What? I was supposed to be the one to take her down first. Let's see how strong you've really become, because I'm ready to take you down." In his wildest dreams, that is, our bird destroys him because we're higher level and stronger, and then my fire dinosaur once again takes out his cat with a single ember. Rest in peace, Theo. Will he ever recover from this loss? I don't think so, but we do end up in Moki Town once again. The professor greets us, checks up on our Pokedex, and hands us some more balls before letting us go. And where do we go, you may ask? Well, to capture some more Pokemon, like our very own Phalang that we can maybe use to put everything to sleep and be annoying. Alvin also evolves into Kinnickmonk, a normal electric type. Very nice to have this early on. And Poe the Barrel evolves into D-Rule. Had not expected this thing to evolve into a horse of some kind, but I like that he's still looking derpy. We reach Burrell Town, and there's really not all that much to see here except for the gym, so we go and challenge Davern instead. He doesn't specialize in a single type. Instead, he specializes in Pokemon exclusively found in caves. He leads off with a Grozard, which is now just a regular ground type, and just reminds me of a Diglett that's been lizard-fied. I start by going for Giga Drain, and when I'm about to take it out with a second one, he swaps out into Modrill, another pure ground type. But then when I'm about to take it out with another Giga Drain, he swaps out into Grozard again, so I can take that down as well as Modrill on the turn after. He sends out his own D-Rule, and I know that I can just put this to sleep, going to Talon and Mud Slap it a couple of times to bring out his ace Tofurang. I decide to go for Ember with Talon because Mud Slap isn't going to work because this thing has Levitate. He manages to paralyze me with a lick, but because he made contact, my Flame Body kicks in and burns the big hip hippo thing bat. I don't know what this is. Because it's burned anyway, I swap in Po, the dragon warrior, and this thing just goes for Poison Fang every single time. And because I'm a steel type, I negate every single one of those moves, take it down with a few metal claws, and gain the Bright Gem badge. This gives us access to some more encounters, so we head over to Route 4, and I hope you like fish because we just got an old rod and we fished up a Braylip. An insanely good water psychic type with good special attack and special defense that evolves into one of the coolest fishes you'll ever see. But we're not there yet. We name it Pinky after the dumb friend from the smartest mouse or rat you will ever see. Later on this route, I run into Theo, who's talking to a hiker, telling him to not go into this cave because it's way too dangerous to go in alone. So we bump in and say we will escort this child through this cave. Don't worry. We have 2 gym badges, we're strong, we can get through this. We enter Comet Cave and end up capturing a Tone Me together. Not the best encounter, but he's going to be very useful to us in the next couple of minutes. First, however, the ground starts shaking, the rocks fall down, and Theo flees because he's too scared. Now we're all alone, trapped here behind these boulders, and that's when a Terrlar, the ground dragon type, pops up out of nowhere and attacks me. I didn't really level up my team for this fight, so we're not prepared at all, but Dunsparce was a pretty good counter to him as I used Yawn, then used Screech a couple of times to lower its defenses, and span Pursuit for a couple of turns until the Terralard was down. I also got really lucky that he had a magnitude 5, because if it would have been a 7 or higher, Dunsparce would not have lived, and I couldn't have swapped him out because of the arena trap ability that the Terralard had. Rocheville Town was our next destination, and there was something very special here. A lady that wanted to trade a Palish for a Tofurang, so I evolved him and said goodbye to King Tut, after not being used in a single battle. But what do we get in return? A fire flying type, and once this thing evolves, we will have my favorite Pokemon of this game. But we're not there yet. We run into the professor first, who says that there is an emergency at Cypress Labs and doesn't have a lot of time to talk with me right now. But he can really use our help, so he takes me to the lab and they run me down on everything that's happening. Apparently somebody broke in here and stole a device that lets you talk to Pokemon. How cool is that? Just imagine a device in the real world that lets you talk to your dog or your cat. Although that might be a little bit annoying though, because my cats only want food. But we're getting sidetracked. They didn't actually steal the PST, they stole the Pokemon that they were testing the PST on. PST translating the Pokemon speech translator. Then one of the assistants comes in and is like, I found this Outen that was stolen last night on Route 6, so let's test the PST on him and check if he has some information about the thief.
He says scary, so scary. Was in my Pokeball, asleep, suddenly, and moving, but not human friend, taking me and others. Out towards Mountain Cave, dropped my Pokeball, and got free.
Thank you, Mr. Yoda, for this information. Let's head towards that mountain cave. On my way towards this cave, I grabbed 2 more Pokemon, the first one being a Mareep, and the second one being an Outen, so we add both of them to the team and enter that nasty cave. The thief immediately confronts us, but we notice something weird. It's not a person at all. It seems to be a Pokemon named Garlikid. We don't understand a thing he's saying because he's just saying Garly. So we make him use the PST so that we can understand what he's saying. He says that he's just trying to save all of these Pokemon from the trainers because he thinks that they're suffering and that they need to be free and open in the wild, and says that he will keep freeing and liberating them as long as he's alive. And then he attacks me like he's a real Pokemon trainer, attacking me with a Lunapup, Minion, and Boschoff, but our newly acquired Kavi can easily defeat them with Flame Bursts, and I also get some cuts of air. He doesn't understand how he lost this battle and why these Pokemon even fight on behalf of humans. We tell this Pokemon that they're our friends, but he doesn't believe me. The Pokemon then jump out of their Pokeball and run back to the lab as fast as possible. After this, he says that he's still going to try and free all the Pokemon are being held against their will, and that he, Garlikid, will be back. We step outside and the professor and all of the assistants are there congratulating us for another successful mission complete. They also say that Garlikid is one of the rarest Pokemon around and that they've not been sighted in a very long time. They live somewhere in the mountains, isolated away from people, and this one probably has never seen a person before. That's why when he came across the lab, he thought that we were enslaving all of these Pokemon, and so he tried to save them. As a reward, we also get to keep this prototype of the PST so that we can can keep talking to Pokemon when needed. And this will definitely come in handy if we run into that Garly kid again. The assistants go back to the lab and the professor tells me to head over to Beale Beach City to head to the next gym badge. He also hands you the EXP share if you want to grind up some Pokemon, which we immediately use to evolve Peppy into a Vaden. Ursaring finally becomes his last form Nymflora as well, and while this thing might look like a special attacker, it's actually a really good physical attacker, but it doesn't get any physical attacks until like level 40. So it's a little useless right now except for its sleep powder ability. In an upcoming cave I captured a Gligar. After this I went sunbathing on the beach, and as I was chilling out, I felt a very sharp pain in my toe. A Kokoran had snapped it off. So in return, I captured it and trapped it in a Pokeball for eternity and never let it out. As I was making my way over to Beale Beach City, Theo almost pushed me off a bridge. He's surprised that we managed to survive the trip here. He also got a PST from the professor so that we can both talk to Pokemon, and he's been blazing through all the trainers ever since the last time we saw him. And this time, he's not going to back down just like in Comet Cave against the Terrorlord. No, he's ready to take me on, as he sends out a Castnail that gets Giga Drain because it's a water ground type. A Feeden comes out and I know my bug type is not surviving this matchup, so I swap in Poe and started Metal Clawing away, but every time I used Metal Claw, Avidin would use Roost. But the stalling out eventually ended once I got my attack boost and destroyed the masked bird. Pinky finally takes some time in the spotlight as well, as it takes out his Lunapup, a ground fighting type with a water pulse, and just like always, Raptor wins against Cat. However, this time he seems to have grown in his personality. He doesn't blame his Pokemon, he blames that they were tired of all the fighting they did, and now he's going to try to get ahead of me by defeating the next gym leader first. But we can't let that happen, so we go to Beale Beach City ourselves and go talk to a random girl there, and she gives me an egg from a different region. Another cool thing is that most of the eggs here actually have the shape of the Pokemon that is going to pop out. This egg is also going to count as my Beale Beach City encounter, so we're going to be able to use it too. However, before we hatch the egg, we have to make a stop at the Ranger Institute in this city, where the boss there is none other than our long-lost father. He was expecting my arrival and apologizes for not having too much time for me, and he's also ready to give me a special tour of the Ranger HQ. He tells me that I've grown up so nicely, big and strong, and that when he was my age, he was just a junior cadet at the HQ here, and that I'm also a great role model for Theo. Just when he's about to say something else, he gets a letter. It's from Cameron at the new nuclear power plant they're building. My dad then asks me for a favor. He wants me to go to the new power plant and deliver his response to Cameron. It's very important because my mother disappeared on that island over 10 years ago, and we can never forget that. So he hands me his letter and sends us off. We get greeted by a sailor that's supposed to take us there, but he doesn't think that children should be at a nuclear power plant and needs to call Cameron first. That's when Theo comes along and says that he also wants to come. Luckily for us, Cameron gives him the green light and he sends us over with the boat. We meet up with Theo's dad here, and he goes on to explain that the letter that we just gave to him said that my father wants me to see the ruins of the destroyed power plant. He also says my dad has been fixated on this for a very long time because Cameron at that time was called in by the power plant to do some repairs, and while everything seemed fine at first, eventually the radiator started leaking heat and everything went boom. He's going to let us into the power plant, but he warns us that there is weird Pokemon roaming around that have been affected by the radiation and are ultimately very aggressive. Theo wants to come too, but his dad is not going to allow him because it's too dangerous. The only reason he's letting me go is because my father requested him to. So he sends Theo back with the boat and allows me to roam the island freely. We start running into the grass to get our next encounter and run into a nuclear Tancoon. We do end up capturing it, but nuclear Pokemon are especially very dangerous because all of their moves are super effective against us, meaning that if I have a dual type Pokemon, it's always going to be 4 times super effective. So you don't want to get hit by these very much. And on top of that, if you try to use one in battle, they don't listen to you. You get a device in the post-game that lets them listen to you, but that's not for us in this video. However, I'm able to add Gamma the Tancoon to my team, and then me and Cameron arrive at the old plant. Cameron says that he has tried to search this building over 100 times at this point, but still hasn't found any trace of my mother. However, this building is so old and decrepit that is actually falling apart and is ready to be demolished in the next couple of months, so this might be the last chance we get to explore it. So we go around finding some burnt notebooks that talk about experiments that they were doing at this lab. It's very weird that Cameron has never found these since he's already searched this place multiple times, so either he's lying or he's blind. We also end up finding a rusty key that eventually leads us to the reactor room. And what's even weirder is that there's still something on in here. A place that must have never been discovered because it's hidden behind a special pathway. We talk to this weird machine and it says 10 03 01 16 24 60 and then activate the restoration process. But an error occurs and we fall through the floor and get attacked by a nuclear top print. We use the PSD on it and it says
kill the intruder, crush, destroy, kill.
These nuclear Pokemon are in fact very aggressive, but this is not normal. After taking it down with some metal claws from Poe, we fall unconscious because there's a lot of radiation down in this hole. Cameron calls me on my radio and asks me if everything is alright, but obviously we don't answer and they realize that there is something wrong and come to my rescue. We wake up in a bed with Cameron and a nurse standing next to us and they ask what happened. We explain everything and luckily nothing seems to be broken, but there is a little bit of radiation in our system. Nothing to be too concerned about though, as we've already been treated for it. We show the notebook that we found to Cameron because he's going to examine it, and the first thing he notices is that these are lab reports, which is weird because this was a power plant, not a lab at all. There shouldn't have been testing of any kind over there. He's going to try and find out more, and he also tells me to not go back to that power plant because it's just a breeding ground for hostile Pokemon and it needs to be demolished as fast as possible. We should leave as fast as possible because we don't want any more radiation in our system since that could be fatal, and so I start walking to the boat to get back to the mainland, but then my egg hatches into a Newpin, a grass electric type that is really great at special attacks, and let's be honest, grass electric is actually a very decent typing as well. We head back to Beale Beach City, evolve our Mareep into Fluffy, and go to the beach gym leader, Callie, who starts out with a tub jaw. I send out Biscuit and set up a sunny day because I have the chlorophyll ability and this will double my speed. With that, we can just Giga Drain this water dark type out of here, set up a growth on Braylip and drain away its HP just like Sablo, who is not taking a grass type move in any universe. The last Pokemon is Cararalm, a grass ground type, and with the combined power of my bird and bear moth, we take it down and receive the Tide Badge. With all the radiation in my body, I leave Beale Beach City, but an insane explosion happens. Our father and the rangers go to help out and they tell me to look across the ocean and we see smoke coming off the island we just came from, which means something must have happened at the power plant. Just like 10 years ago, it's exploded, and my dad has to head to the island immediately because people are in danger, because this time he's going to make a difference for me and my mom. We have to get out of here because waves of radiation are going to be hitting this shore in a couple of minutes. So he hands me a ferry ticket which I can use to get away from this place as far as possible, but the way to the ferry was littered with nuclear Pokemon and we had to help the rangers to kill them. We fought against Corsolas and Gyarados and finally managed to make our way on the boat, which left as soon as I got on. On the boat there were a couple of trainers, so I defeated them and this caused my Raptorch to evolve into Archilles. And I'm not gonna lie, this thing is looking hella cool. Theo also got evacuated by my dad and is here on the boat as well and once again wants to fight. But he's also incredibly scared that his dad might have died in this accident and asks if my dad is going to be able to save his, since he's a Pokemon Ranger and all. We don't really have an answer to that question, so instead, to kill the time and get his mind off of all of these bad thoughts, we battle him. Biscuit thunderbolts his bird, Giga drains his Spritzy, as well as his Sablo and Lunapup, who are able to set up a rain dance, but even all of this rain is not going to save his Metalynx, which is now evolved, from the fiery wrath of my Raptor. He gets really sad once again because his dad's in trouble and he can't even win a Pokemon battle after trying his hardest, and then he tells me to leave him alone, as the boat docks at our next destination. A farmy landscape of some kind where we accidentally kill our next encounter, Barrent. Fortunately for us, Peppy evolves into Splendifowl really quickly, giving us another nice special attacking flying type. We do end up running into Vinaville Town, a quiet little place with not too many things going on except for a gym that we have to take on. This time, the gym puzzle was absolutely insane because you have to remember a pattern, and I'm really bad at doing those things. So I kept on falling in and having to try again until I reached a Steel-type gym leader Sheldon Cooper and showed him what the real Big Bang Theory is all about. He brings out the aliens, literally a UFO. I flame burst it with Kyvie, but then he brings out a big horse called Gararule. At this point, I'm still thinking this is a rock steel type, but it's changed to a full-on monotype steel. Hence why I swap into my starter and start magnituding away until it's dead. I even managed to burn it with my flame body, which definitely helped. Meteor comes out and I magnitude this thing once again. Rolling an 8 and one-shotting here. Dracton is his last Pokemon and by far the scariest. A Dragon Steel type that can easily take me out if it starts setting up. On top of that, it also has Speed Boost as its ability, so we don't want this thing on the field for too long. We go for Magnitude and get a 6, which does about half of its health while it is able to set up a Shift Gear and boosts its attack and speed. The turn after hits me with a Dragon Claw, leaving me with 10 HP, and my Magnitude turns out to be a 5, which is even worse, meaning the Tracton survives. I have to get Talon out of here. I'm panicking at this point because I think that nothing can survive a hit from this Tracton 2 times in a row. I was ready to risk losing my starter here, but then I remembered something. AI is stupid. They're probably going to heal on this turn. I go for Magnitude, get a 7, kill the Tracton, and save everybody. We get our very own Pixel badge, which means we're about halfway through our gym challenge, and we run into Theo again outside, and he's wondering how we already got this gym badge so fast, because he got defeated on his very first attempt. He then says that he just wants to be a strong trainer and that he's trying his best. Why doesn't everything just go his way like it does mine? Why did Dad's power plant have to blow up? He's actually having an existential crisis, and I feel incredibly bad for him, as he still hasn't heard any word of his father. But it's about to get even worse because an earthquake happens and a weird fog starts lifting from the air. One of the rangers comes up to us and tells us to get on their Staraptor because another emergency has happened. But there's no time to explain as she flies us to Legion Town. While we're flying away, we see that another nuclear meltdown has happened, and after arriving in the town, the rangers take us to this very safe place where all the townspeople have gathered. The rangers do an announcement saying that the nuclear plant Zeta has also suffered a meltdown, bringing the region in a state of chaos like it's never been in before. People are trying to wonder if this has actually been done on purpose because these two so close together can't be a coincidence. Everybody starts looking around because they can't confirm any rumors, but they honestly just want all the Pokemon to be safe as well. The Rangers are trying their very best to help out everybody and everything, but they obviously can't make miracles happen. However, they are in need of some strong trainers to help them out battling nuclear Pokemon on Route 11, so we decide to volunteer and follow them. They brief us on our mission to try and take down as many nuclear Pokemon as possible, otherwise they might overrun the town. Our dad is here as well, and he apologizes for sending me to Vinaville Town because he thought that he was sending me out of harm's way, and instead, he sent me into it. We tell him it's okay because he had no idea that there was going to be a second explosion, and now he's going to try and do his best by helping out all of the citizens of Legion Town. And he can't do it alone, so I guess we'll have to team up with our beloved father. Me and the boys head out, and I end up capturing a nuclear Ekans here, which is never going to be used because it's a brat that never listens to me. Me and my dad help an Outton that's being attacked by a nuclear Tanscure and Boshoff, and the cool thing is that my dad actually has an Emperilla, which is a new evolution of Primate. This game was ahead of its time with Annihilate coming out last year. We both one-shot them and we keep plowing through until we run into a mother and her son that are being harassed by an Ekans and a Gligar, so we take them out easily, but then when we go and comfort the two, we get attacked by an Arbok and a Barand. My dad is caught off guard, and I'm left fighting these two on my own. Pippi and Ursaring, however, make quick work of them, and that was that. All the nuclear Pokemon have been cleared out of the area, and my dad starts crying because he's so proud of my battling skills. Too bad he didn't raise me, because I definitely didn't get these of him. He does state that he is very proud of me, which I guess is nice, and as a reward he even gives me the strength HM, which is even nicer. He even gives me the directions to my next gym badge, which should be in Amatry Town, meaning that we'll have to go through the Bakial rainforest in order to get there, because it's a remote place that not a lot of people visit. So yeah, let's do this. Just before the rainforest, I captured a flagger, a fire dog thing that reminds me a lot of Litleo. I then used my newly acquired strength HM to go back to Comet Cave and get rid of some rocks so that we can pick up one of the fossils. The fossil Pokemon in this game are nothing special. I don't think they look that great either, so I highly doubt I'll be using them. However, we do reach the rainforest straight after, where we evolve Biscuit into Jelin and also capture a Tikiki, a masked monkey that is a fire grass type. I'm starting to think there's a lot of fire types in this game, so we name it Garux, and then we enter a nearby cave with a bug trainer in there who has a Harptera, an amazing looking bug type that deserves to be a bug dragon type but is actually a bug flying type. So unfortunately, it suffers from the same fate as Yanmega. Once this battle was over, Kyvie evolved into my favorite Pokemon. Are you ready for this? It's Payjay, the better looking Talonflame. No shade thrown to Talonflame, by the way. I love Talonflame, but this thing is just way cooler. This cave is also full of bugs that are blocking off pathways, so naturally my encounter here was going to be a S'more. If this was a female S'more, however, we could have gotten a legendary Pokemon, but it's a male, so it's kind of useless, and yet another fire type that we can throw in a bin. Oh yeah, I almost forgot, I also got my own horse while battling against a Quetzalcoatl. And I'm just saying, man, Pokemon based on dinosaurs are the best. I mean, just look at this majestic bird-lizard hybrid thing and tell me you don't want it on your team. Anyway, enough simping for dinosaurs, onto Amatry Town, but sadly enough, the gym leader isn't here as we're talking to one of his assistants. He has gone off into that bug-infested cave to train up his Pokemon, but hasn't returned in a while. He asks me to go check up on him and also hands me some bug repellent spray so that we can get rid of those nasty critters. So we spray the bugs in the face and scare them off, fall into a hole, and then somebody starts shouting at me.
Hey, you, over here.
We walk over just to see the gym leader being entangled by all of the bugs in this weird web. He was attacked by all of them at once and his Pokemon were overwhelmed, hence why they managed to capture him. Then some weird earthquakes start happening and he has a very bad feeling about this, so he tells me to untie him, and he seems to be wearing a skirt, which shocks me a little bit, because it's all flowing down there, you know. Just when we're about to get out of here, we get blocked off by even more bugs. That's when their queen, the Seika Mater, wakes up, which only happens once every few years and is ready to devour us. Since Tico's Pokemon are all knocked out, we're going to have to defeat this thing all by ourselves, and this is actually also a legendary, the legendary that we could have had if that stupid S'more was just a female. Unfortunately, the Psychomater cannot be captured. I tried, believe me. So instead, I had to light it up with Talon's flamethrowers. It shouts out a scream of pain one last time and then disappears, dropping the Royal Jelly, which is used to evolve a S'more into this thing. We go outside with Tico and he brings me to his gym because he wants to know if he can actually defeat the man that saved his life. Since we've been talking about fire-type Pokemon for quite some time, it's time to meet their specialist, because it's time to extinguish Tico's flames. For this exact battle, I gave Talon Rock Slide, which was great for his first Pokemon Palage, as I just dropped one rock on his feather, and that rendered the bird incapable of flight. I think he has something with Pokemon that are weak 4 times to rock, because his next two, Firoak and Payjay, both share this weakness. However, Payjay swaps out just before I can kill it into Chimaconda the Chimera, who instead dies to a Rock Slide and a Magnitude 9. However, I wasn't sure that my Raptor could outspeed his Payjay, so I swapped it out for my own bird, air slashing it twice and killing it. Then his last Pokemon came out, which was named Inflagetta, which is an amazing name and is just a pure fire type. I'm able to put it to sleep with my other bird and then just swap into Talon to magnitude it a couple of times, giving me access to the Salsa badge, and I just love salsa, so I think I'm going to grab myself a bowl of nachos. We can now use Surf outside of battle, meaning that I evolve my Braylip into Brainor, the beautiful koi with the brain of gold. Oh yeah, we also got the big fire ant, and Garux evolved into Freaky Tiki, who's just a bigger monkey with a bigger mask. Have you ever just gone sailing at sea and all of a sudden ninjas attack attack you out of nowhere? Yeah, that happened. They're called the surfing ninjas, and they only have these ninja-like fish that go down pretty easily. Luckily, I have Po the Dragon Warrior by my side, who destroys all of these ninjas with superior martial arts. The word of our skills spread so far that eventually even the leader of the clan came up to me, put a stop at me trespassing their waters. But as it turns out, Biscuit can just sweep his entire team because it's full of water types. After he's defeated, he bows down to me because I must be the chosen one that's stronger than him. He bestows these waters to me and leaves with his clan. That's right, don't mess with the Zwiggo clan, otherwise you'll get the horns, or I guess the ninja stars. Anyway, we get to the next route and capture a Jack Deary, a fighting fairy type that's just the incarnation of the Easter Bunny. We keep on traversing our very own waters and end up in Venice, Italy. Venice is known for having a lot of rat problems, so we solve them really quickly and find a move reminder and move deleter that are definitely going to come in handy. Inside of a bar, I buy a carrot wine and also defeat a Titan Ice, which is literally just Titanic with an E put behind it. Really clever. We evolve our rat, bunny, and fish into their final evolutions and get some pretty overpowered team members. As we know, Zwiggojr has the potential to be one of the most broken Pokemon out there, and has an amazing typing on top of that. We get an invite to the local Coliseum, which has been turned into a theater, and we beat off all the people with all of these acting masks. And just when we think we've defeated the gym leader, the floor falls underneath our feet, and we get greeted by the real gym leader, Rosalind, who's a user of drama Pokemon, and actors, and Pokemon with masks. We hit it off with Easter and go for Dark Pulse on the incoming masking, which is just using illusion to look like Dramsama. He swaps in a Winnotinger, so I go into Jackie thinking that I'll easily one-shot this with an Iron Tail, forgetting in the back of my mind that it's actually a fighting type. My Iron Tail does almost take it out, but I still get one-shot, meaning that Jackie is my very first death in his very first battle against the very first Pokemon he ever faces. What an awful record for our Swordfish. He will be remembered as the worst ever team member. Kyvie can easily Lava Plume this thing, but then Miasmedi comes in, so I swap into Po. It only uses Moonblast, which I can easily resist, and with a couple of Metal Whips, Duplicat comes out, which is basically this region's Ditto. It transforms into my very own horse, which might have been the dumbest thing she could have ever done, because we bring out our Fiery Bird and Lava Plume once again, bringing out our last Pokemon. It survives a Lava Plume, counters back with a Psyshock, almost taking my bird down too, but luckily for us, one more Lava Plume does the trick, and we become the master of drama. Speaking of drama though, Theo is here, but he's changed. He doesn't even get mad anymore when I tell him I already have this next gym badge. Instead, he just wants to show me how strong he's really become. He now has a Splendifowl of his own, but we have the perfect counter in Biscuit with Thunderbolt. I was going to take out his next Pokemon Miasmedic with Poe's Metal Whips again, but when I start hitting it, he swaps out into his Sablow, a really good choice. But not good enough, as Biscuit wipes his off the field with a Giga Drain once again. Then Miasmedic is once again up against Poe. This time we do take it down. His newly evolved Hiroloon gets destroyed by Surf's Pinky, and just like always, fire burns down his Grass Cat. We then run into a cave with a ton of Curio. We get some amazing held items here, as well as some nice TMs, but also a newly acquired Pokemon called Linkite. Speaking of that, I really want the substitute plush. Also, on top of all this, I found an EV training room where you actually have to punch a punching bag at the right moment. Not easy at all, but this can definitely come in handy. Our next encounter was a Corsola, and since it has a new evolution in this game, I decided to capture it, but never use it. I prefer Corsola anyway. Our next destination was Silverport Town, where we found another laboratory. Here we meet a different professor who seems to know Bambo, as he tells me that they used to go to school together until somebody accused him of plagiarizing work. Can you believe it? A genius like him plagiarizing? Yeah, I don't believe the guy either. He also seems incredibly shady and has an Outen in his lab, so we go and talk to it with the PES system, and the Outen says that they're hurting him and doing some really bad things to the little guy. That's when the professor realizes that we can actually talk to it, and he gets really interested in the PST device. But he doesn't have time to deal with me and tells us to leave, and then lock the door of his lab. So we try to get to the next town, but we get ambushed by some Team Rocket grunts, and they bring us back to a prison. And who's there talking to us in a very creepy voice? Professor Larkspur. He knew the only way that he could ambush me was was to take away my Pokemon and bring me here. So unfortunately, we don't have any help that bust us out of here. He explains that he couldn't just let me go with that PST device because his entire company is basically in debt to a lot of people and is about to get bankrupt. So now with this new PST, they're going to start mass producing them and try to sell them everywhere. They're also going to try and make a device that suppresses Pokemon's will so that they obey the commands of humans without hesitation. Once they're done with all of these incredible evil ideas, they're going to let me out, and they might give me my Pokemon back or they might use them as test experiments. Since I don't want anything like that to happen to my buddies, I punch a hole through the wall, and I get into a different cell block where Garlickid is trapped. So we give him the right code to get him out, because he's probably the only one that'll be able to get us out of here. He decides to come along with me, and we head back to our cell where he pries open the jail bars with his very own arms. Why he didn't just do that to his own jail, I don't know, but he helps me beat up all of the scientists. We get all of our stuff back and run into Larkspur. He isn't too happy that we've broken out and wants us locked up again as soon as possible. And he isn't only an evil scientist, he's also an evil Pokemon trainer with a pretty decent team. Easter Aurasphere's the first two Pokemon, and Talon Magnitude's Luchabra and Raffidi. He only had one last Pokemon remaining, which was Chainite. I really want to get this Pokemon for myself because I have the Prevolution, but you can only get it if you trade with other players, and I didn't have access to that. So instead, I just took it down to Flamethrowers. With this entire operation in shambles, he hands me the PST back and flees the region because maybe Team Rocket will be able to hire him to give him some kind of future. That's a happy ending for us, and Garlickid also joins my team for good. And I won't complain about that at all because he's incredibly strong and versatile. Since he kind of looks like One Punch Man, I named him Saitama and headed out of Silverport Town and into Lanthanite Cave where everything was freezing. Naturally, an ice bug type showed up, so I captured it in my quick ball. Just outside of the cave, my dreams came true as I ran into a Bashaw, and this was a different route, so I also added Baja Blast to the team and evolved them into the even stronger Bariat, the best dark fighting type of them all. But I'm not gonna lie, I think this boy might be even better and cooler. Brush ended up evolving in Frostra, one of the most overpowered Pokemon in this game with a base stat total that will make you scream. I also evolved Milo into a bigger cat, and then we reached the 7th gym where Theo is waiting on us. He already has a new outfit for this new snowy weather and is looking a lot more matured. This is also the first time he got to a gym before me, so there's definitely a shift going on here. However, this gym isn't normal. You have to overcome many trials, and in the end, if you manage to defeat all of them, you also have to take on the leader, who will then grant you access to Mega Evolution. One of the sages that live here comes up to us and is like, if you want to take on this gym, you'll have to do it together, but also separately. This gets Theo pumped up to the max. We step inside together and do our very first trial, but we get separated, and I'm not going to lie, these trials are really easy. You just have to complete some kind of little puzzle or little maze and then defeat one of the sages, who did have some very cool Pokemon like Dunsaraf and Voltasu. But in the end, my brain and due diligence got through all of these trials unscathed, which means that me and Theo are ready to take on the leader, Varin. He is the dragon, the Arbiter of Mega Evolution, and the cool thing is that we can take him on together with our very best friend. And he wasn't lying, he really has the best dragon type, starting off with a Dunsaraf and a Glavenug. My cross shop, however, is the best thing to clear out sea serpents. As Alpico came in, I swapped out into Kavi, who immediately got body slammed by Dunsaraf and paralyzed. On top of that, I also brought in Alpico and took down Splendofowl, so my buddy here had to bring out Nucleon, the most overpowered Pokemon you will ever see. From the moment I bring in Brush, this Nucleon goes for Hyper Voice, which is now a nuclear type move because of its ability, and this is just 4 times super effective on everything this guy throws out. So it is basically a guaranteed one-shot every time. I am incredibly glad Theo has such an overpowered team member, because without it, we might have actually lost a couple of Pokemon to this guy. His own Mega was an Ampharos, which once again was an easy kill for Nucleon, and after the battle was ended, we get the power of Mega Evolution in our own hands, and we even get to pick which Pokemon we want a Mega Stone for. Obviously, I'm going for my starter, because this kind of counts as its third evolution. It automatically puts it at the front of my party against Theo's Metallics. We both click our Mega Evolution button at the same time, but yet again we come out on top because Flamethrower is just too much for this cat. Saitama drops a leaf on Escartris to take it out too. Brush then throws his bird out of the sky, just like the next two Pokemon Miasmatic and Hiroloon. He then sent out his Nucleon, and I knew that every single one of my moves was going to be super effective against it. So I swapped out into Milo because he only has one typing, meaning that he only takes 2 times damage. On the swap in, Nucleon went for Mirror Coat, so I used Encore the turn after to lock it into it and then killed it with 2 more slashes. With that, we have defeated Theo once again. This time he takes his loss incredibly well, and Varen even says that he's not seen a battle like this in many years. He sends us away because there are more challengers approaching, and Theo is so excited that he calls the professor and tells him that we have acquired the power of Mega Evolution. The professor is also incredibly proud of us, and as a reward he's going to upgrade our Pokedexes, so he flies over and we all gang up together. We reminisce about how Theo has grown so much as a trainer and a person too, and we also find out that the professor apparently surfs quite a lot. He then upgrades our Pokedex so that we can now also register Mega Pokemon in it, and then we also tell him what happened at Larkspur's lab. He knows that that scientist was always a thug and he never actually liked him, so he seems quite happy that we managed to deal with him. Theo also goes on to ask where our next destination is, and it seems to be Tsukunami Village. Unfortunately, we have to take a stretch of ocean there that is owned by pirates and ninjas and is used as a battleground, so it's incredibly dangerous to traverse. Not to mention, it's in the east of Tandor, which means there is also a nuclear power plant there too. Even after all of these warnings, we still have to do this anyway, so we part our ways, but the professor says one more thing, and that is that he's working on a cure to try and get all of these nuclear Pokemon back to normal, so if we can do anything to help, we should let him know. As it turns out, it's actually pretty easy for us to get to Venesi City, as this old man just wants to take me there. If he wasn't a pirate in disguise and attacked me out of nowhere. He had a new regional form of Cubone called Swabone that's now actually a pirate. I guess losing his mother really turned his life around for the worst. They also have Hogrosses, which I think are the evolution of Tarprints, and I absolutely love the design of these guys. They still have to be burned down though, and after making the pirate walk the plank, the real owner of this boat comes along and he decides to bring me to a nearby city so that we can there use our newly acquired Dive HM that we got from the professor, pop back up right where we need to be, and have another naval battle with the pirates. This time we washed 2 of them to shore, and we even had the help of our ninja friends from earlier to scare away all the threats that come our way. There's also a new route here with some grass, so I capture a Stenowatt here, a rather raptor-type Pokemon, but it has no evolution and absolutely garbage stats, so this sadly enough won't be used. After this, we reach Tsukunami Village, and we once again get greeted by our ninja brethren who say that their boss has been waiting on us all this time. First, I do some sightseeing, and I have to say this town is absolutely gorgeous to look at. There is really cool statues, all the buildings are kind of like in Eastern style, and I really like that. There's also a museum here with 3 legendary Pokemon statues, and honestly, these look awesome. Just like with Xenoverse, if you guys want me to do a post-game video, I'd be glad to do so, but let's try to hit 15,000 likes so I know you really are enthusiastic about it. But this town has 2 gym leaders, and you don't have to defeat them in a double battle, you have to defeat them one after the other. On top of that, they're also the emperors of this ninja clan that lives here, and are some of the strongest trainers this region has ever seen. I first take on Kaito and his dark-type Pokemon, as he starts off with an Umbreon against my Moth. I mean, the only thing I had to do here was set up 3 Quiver Dances, and I could one-shot every single Pokemon on his team with Freeze Dry or Silver Wind. I'm telling you, this Icy Moth is way more overpowered than the one we got in Sword and Shield. A really cool acquisition to his team though was a Mega Arbok that looks like Medusa. Luckily, it didn't turn me to stone, and I was able to get through him without any casualties, meaning that I could move on to the second leader, Hinata, who doesn't really have one type she specializes in. However, she does start off with a Flareon, which is not too great for my Icy Moth, so I swap out into Pinky, taking a Flare Blitz and getting burned. I can survive another attack after this and counter back with a single Surf to wash away the Fiery Dog. Gelling came out, and I was expecting an electric type move, so I swap into Talon to negate it, then take it out with Flamethrower. Coatlith also gets burned, and the final Pokemon, Mega Whimsicott, gets all of her hair burned off. Yet another gym badge has been acquired by me, but that doesn't mean our journey is over yet. As we head outside through the yin and yang pattern gym, we get a call from Professor Bambo. He's really proud of me for getting the final gym badge. He knew from the day I set foot in his lab that I was going to be something special, and I really appreciate all the faith he's put into me. The next thing on my list is going to be the championship, because they're still holding it despite all of these pop-ups of nuclear Pokemon, but that might change soon because the professor all of a sudden gets a call. It's the Rangers, and something terrible must have happened because they also come into town saying that there has been a potential threat to everybody's safety as somebody is planning another attack on the other power plant near here. The people of the town don't really believe the Rangers, and that's when the king and queen come out and say, "Shut up. Listen to these people because they only want the best for our safety." The Rangers explain that all of these power plant meltdowns have not been natural and that there is somebody behind it all. While all of the townspeople are evacuating, the Ranger asks me to come with them to the power plant because my dad has asked for my help specifically because he knows we're such a strong trainer. We comply and join up with the rest of the rescue squad as Theo and the professor are here joining my dad as well. They brief me on the situation because they got a tip from an unknown someone that this island was filled with nuclear Pokemon. And they weren't wrong because that's what's happening right now. We have to clear them out with the help of all of the ninjas as well as the Rangers. While me, my dad, and the Rangers are taking care of the last couple of nuclear Pokemon, a strange light emits from the power plant. It's green and it's looking incredibly radioactive and dangerous. That's when a weird figure with a hazmat suit comes out as well as a Pokemon that nobody has ever seen before. He kinda looks like a Ben 10 alien if you ask me, but these must be the two behind all of the nuclear meltdowns. My dad tells them to identify themselves and they say that their names are Curie and Urain. And they say we have to get out of their way, otherwise we will face the consequences. We stand strong, however, and they attack me with a move called Half-Life. One of the Rangers jumps in front of me and she all of a sudden gains radiation poisoning and has to get her out of here. But that's when the nuclear Pokemon come back and attack us from behind, leaving us stranded in this spot. As it turns out, she can control all of these nuclear Pokemon with the power of her suit. They attack my father with the same move as well, and they demand more nuclear fuel so that they can become stronger. And if we don't give it to them, they will kill us right here on the spot. We obviously don't comply because we don't want other people to get in danger, and my dad steps in. Curie tells Urain to attack my father with an atomic punch, and in that moment, thunder strikes from the skies and hits Urain, and the long-lost man Cameron swoops down. He wasn't dead in the explosion at all. He had the uranium of this power plant removed so that they couldn't gain any more power because he knew something fishy was going on. And he also figured out their weakness because without fuel, they have no power. Now it all comes together. Cameron was the one that gave the tip to the Rangers about this power plant. Theo is shocked that his father is still alive. After all this, Cameron tells Curie to give herself in because they're powerless once we manage to defeat Urain. But Curie says that they have an arsenal of nuclear Pokemon by their side, so they're not powerless at all. Theo then jumps into the battle between Cameron and Curie, saying that he won't let his father disappear again. But that's when Curie says, "This kid, he's important to you, right? Well, let this be a lesson to all of you. Urain, strike him down." But Cameron jumps in front of his son and gets hit instead. That's when Curie says, "Let this be a lesson to all of you. The uranium fuel here is gone, and it doesn't matter because we will find a different power source." That's the moment when they teleport away with Urain's quantum leap. Theo starts crying because he thinks his dad has passed away for real this time, but he seems to still be alive and we have to get him to a hospital as quickly as possible. So with his flying Pokemon, they bring him back to the Ranger HQ at Beale Beach City. The professor also hands me and Theo the HM for Fly, and we follow them soon after, arriving there and getting informed that both of our fathers are on the intensive care. And my dad specifically asked to come and visit him, so let's go and see what's up. He says that he's going to be fine because the exposure to the uranium hasn't been all that fatal. But the nurses also tell him to calm down because he's getting worked up, which is obviously normal because he has a lot of people to save and he can do nothing right now. He has a plan to take down Curie and make the power plant safe again again so that we can begin restoration of the region. On top of all this, Cameron brought some documents with him just before he fell unconscious, and it explains everything about his origins. As it turns out, he's not just Cameron Kane, an engineer, private contractor, and father. As it turns out, his real name is Cameron Stormbringer, and he's an agent of Interpol. And 11 years ago, he returned to the Tandor region to investigate reports of dangerous and illegal experiments on Pokemon. In the process of his undercover investigation, he discovered that a criminal covered his tracks and fled. People died as a result of this, and it has been his single greatest regret in life. After this failure, Interpol released him into an early retirement, but he had never forgotten what he discovered on that island. Theo thinks this is all awesome because his dad is a secret agent, and no one really expected this from him because he was always a reserved sort of guy. But there's more to this letter. Even though he was retired, he would not rest until these criminals were brought to justice. He knew that proof was still out there, so he became a contractor on the new power plant of Epsilon. While they were building this new plant, he planned to investigate the site of the ruined plant to prove that what happened there was no accident. Instead, he found something else, something far more sinister. Blueprints and diagrams that detailed the creation of an artificial Pokemon. He was on the verge to send a report to Interpol with all of this information when the unthinkable happened. A huge detonation shook the island, and that's when he knew this was far from over. He managed to escape that explosion by getting on the back of his Yategaryu, and from high in the sky, he saw Urain and Curie for the very first time. Curie is a high-tech device that was made in the labs. Its purpose appears to be some type of mental relay, as it transmits the wearer's thoughts and commands to the Pokemon Urain. Urain itself is a man-made Pokemon built to be the source of unlimited energy at its full potential. It has the power to split atoms. However, in order to reach that potential, it needs to consume a large amount of nuclear fuel. It can also sense radioactivity with its ability Geiger Sense, and he believes it was created on that island many years ago and has remained in a deep slumber. And with the arrival of new uranium fuel, it woke it up from its deep sleep. But all of this time, Urain has obviously not been alone. He's been with Curie, and nobody has any idea who this person might be. All that we know is that they want to avoid being seen and are clearly Urain's trainer. They use Quantum Leap to teleport around, and every time they use it, they leave behind some traces which Cameron took to track them down. And the fact that everybody thought that he was dead made it easier to stay undercover. The only thing he was worried about was Theo, but protecting the Tandor region was more important than his own son. Theo gets a little bit agitated about this, but in the end he understands that he was a secret agent and this is all just for the good of the people. He knew they were hiding in one of the abandoned power plants. Eventually the nuclear fuel was also going to run out, which meant that they had to move to a different location. That's how he knew they were moving to East Tandor, where he could make his move. And this brings us back to the present. And with all of this information about their weaknesses, their whereabouts, and what they want, we might actually be able to capture them this time if we set a good enough trap. That's when two rangers come up and say that they managed to track them down. They're somewhere deep in the Vinnoville hazard zone, so that means they must be somewhere in power plant Zeta. So my father tells everybody to assemble the radiation suits, but he doesn't have the strength to lead this mission, so he promotes me, the full ranger, and wants me to lead the mission in his stead. He knows I'm strong enough, and he's incredibly proud of me for having such a good child. He also promotes Theo so he can come on the mission as well, because he wants to make sure his dad's sacrifice was worthwhile. Me and the Autobots roll out to Route 7, where we have to put on the hazard suit, which will protect me from the radiation. We also get stocked up on some new Pokeballs that are going to help us capture nuclear Pokemon because they specially developed it for them. The radiation suit itself, however, is based on the blueprints of Hoenn, where the character has to go into lava because otherwise they won't survive. There is, however, only one of them, and I'm going to be able to wear it, and Theo is just going to have to go in with some radiation wear clothing and a gas mask. So we put on our suit and head outside to the nuclear-infested wasteland that is Vinnoville Town. Rangers will help us out by defeating more nuclear Pokemon and healing ours up if we're ever in a pinch. And even though we're Pokemon Masters, these nuclear Pokemon are always incredibly dangerous. Me and Theo quickly realize that there's a new Pokemon here that nobody has ever seen in a hazmat suit. It looks incredibly cool, but after it notices us, it flees trees and we want to go after it but get attacked by nuclear Pokemon and have to defeat them first. Once we battle through the waves of these green and black Pokemon, Theo notices a pathway that goes into a little den in the woods where the little hazmat guy went into. We enter it and realize that it's very flourishing and it's actually thriving in this weird nuclear wasteland, and we can even take off our hazmat suit and gas mask as there is no radiation here at all, meaning that something must have purged the radiation here and he knows what it is. It's the little guy we just met. They feed off of radiation and basically act as purifiers. So we both capture one for ourselves and call my father to tell him about this incredible discovery. My dad is a little bit skeptical at first and tells Theo to put his mask back on immediately because it might still be dangerous, but after explaining that the Geiger counter on my suit displays no radiation at all, he finally believes us. He says that we have to look into this later, however, because our main concern is still taking down Curie and Urain. So we get moving again and fight off nuclear Pokemon together once again, until, however, we reach the power plant. But Theo is having a lot of trouble breathing here because his gas mask isn't ready to deal with all of these amounts of radiation. My father calls me and tells Theo to not go in because his suit is not made for this. He will die if he goes in there. But Theo's sense of justice doesn't want to comply and he stays with me anyway. Then the radiation levels start rising and the call cuts off and Urain teleports behind us anime style and kidnaps Theo, as well as myself. We wake up in a room deep in the power plant as our suit is rebooting. We have no connection to the outside world and our battery is almost empty, meaning that we have to find a new one as fast as possible. So we start searching around looking for anything that could help us find any clues about Curie or something that could power up my suit again. We quickly find a couple of levers and after pulling them in the right order, we can restore the power and make our way to a weird open area in this power plant that's filled with dead trees and cockroach Pokemon. But the one I captured here was just a Gerbolta, which is kind of useless. We end up taking out level 75 top prints and there's 2 more areas here for us to explore. One of them hosted a power cell, luckily. So now our radiation suit is not going to fail us. And we can activate the tracker again to find Curie and Urain. We finally reach a door and our radiation suit says that behind this point, there are insane levels of radiation and my suit will only be able to hold up for 5 minutes. So I enter and start cruising around the plant like I'm Sonic the Hedgehog. And with 3 minutes and 30 seconds remaining, we reach Urain and Curie at the end of the plant. Curie says, "Foolish child, it's been amusing watching you struggle like this, but here is where your story ends." She plans on taking me and Theo hostage here because that'll make the Rangers comply easier so that they can complete their own plans. She asks me if it hurts to have your dreams and hopes crushed at the very last moment because she wants me to suffer like they have all these years. And it cuts to Theo being in some sort of tank and she explains that he's in stasis, not awake or not asleep. His thoughts are trapped at the very moment he entered this cabin. Basically a single miserable moment drown out into him for eternity. But we're not going to let our friend be in there forever and we challenge Curie and Urain to a battle, and so we get to fight their army of nuclear Pokemon. She leads off with my biggest fear, Nucleon. I go for the Frost Breath with Rush thinking I would outspeed, but she goes for a quick attack which literally almost takes me out despite only having 40 base power. Luckily my Moth is able to take down the Fox and she brings out Arbok next. Knowing I will outspeed, I go for the Freeze Dry and take it out, and then her Xeno Queen comes out. It's clearly straight out of Alien Isolation, and he's even able to withstand a Freeze Dry and then counters back with a Proton Beam, taking out Brush, one of our best Pokemon, falling to an alien species. And this makes me realize that Curie really does only make death and destruction happen. So we send in Talon, Mega Evolve, which sets up the Drought, and Scorch her Xeno Queen, Mega Barriette, and even Urain the nuclear monster, turning it back into its really weak form. And Curie doesn't understand because they were supposed to be invincible, but she realizes Urain is still alive and has some of his powers remaining and orders him to Quantum Leap and teleport away. The jamming of the signal is finally gone and my dad calls me again, and after explaining that we battled them and they managed managed to escape, he understands and says that uranium is in a weaker form, which means they're not as big as a threat anymore. On top of that, the radiation has stopped coming out of this power plant. They can track down the last quantum leap they used to easily subdue Curie. So this was a mission success. After this good news, we free Theo from his prison, and despite being a little dazzled, he seems okay. He says it was awful being in there, but he also realizes that he owes his life to me. He also realizes that he put the entire mission in danger, but he just wanted to help. That's when Dad sends rangers for us, and we get taken out of the plant safely and go back to the HQ to talk to him. He tells me to come with him because Cameron has woken up from his coma. He's already been briefed about Curie and that how we battled her and won. He's incredibly happy that we fulfilled his mission and protected all of Tandor in his stead. Now he can finally reunite with his son. They're also sweeping the entire region, which means that Curie can't hide from us forever, meaning that we can't fully rest until she's captured. But because uranium is in its alpha form, it shouldn't be able to control other nuclear Pokemon anymore, so we should be safe unless they manage to get more uranium. They've taken precautions to this because all the uranium has been taken out of the Tandor region, so if Curie wants to power up again, she's going to have to leave this region too. Cameron is going to try and contact Interpol so that they can help out by capturing Curie, and after that he's going to retire and spend as much time with Theo as possible. We can't really help out too much anymore, so my father tells me to go and take on the Pokemon League and make him even more proud. In Victory Road, we evolve our Dunsparce into Dunstaraf because I really want to use this thing, and we also get to capture the pseudo-legendary of this region, Chibit, a little ground rabbit. Then we gain the power to go outside of the map just because they misplaced one tree, but there was really nothing here, so I just went back to Victory Road, traversing the very dangerous lava path and eventually getting to the gate of the Pokemon League. We give an interview and they realize that we're the Zwiggo that saved the power plants and made the region safe to its inhabitants again. With this TV interview, I will be even more famous, and I will be the most overpowered champion this region has ever seen. But first, I evolve my new pseudo-legendary rabbit into an incredible ground pound powerhouse. Just before we enter the league challenge, my father and the professor come up to wish me luck, because they wouldn't want to miss this for all the gold in the world. Theo and Cameron also take on the league challenge at the same time of me, as they arrive a little bit late. We wish each other the best and enter the arena. My very first opponent, however, is Angelica, a fairy-type trainer. And as it turns out, you just need a Talon with Drought that kill 4 over 5 team members, and Pinky can deal with the last Pokemon Siren Tide by using Psychic 2 times in a row. On to round 2 with Gentleman Sir Goldcorn. He doesn't really have one specific typing, as Baja Blast kills Tanskro with a fighting type move. His Whimsicott gets put on fire by my flamethrower once again. Grubber destroys Splendophile with Outrage and also does some major damage to the incoming Hero Loon, but then we end up confused and weakened, so we bring in Easter to Moonblast it out of here. The final 2 Pokemon, Ampharos and Bariat, fall to the same move, and so we easily win our second round. Our third round in the last stage is against the familiar face, the second gym leader Davern, as he brings out his Tofurang for round 2. Just when Pinky is about to take it out with a Psychic, he swaps it out into his Terlard. With 2 Psychics, the dragon is slayed and he has to bring in Sableye. Easter deals with it by using Moonblast, but then his Frog comes out, which is a poisoned water type. I send out Grubby expecting a poison type move and take it out with an Earthquake. I send out Saitama against his Gliscor and Giga Drain it twice. Then Tofurang comes out, but because it doesn't have any health remaining, we can take it out with 1 hit. And the last Pokemon is a Mega, but not just any Mega, it's a Drillgan. A pure ground type that we can just Giga Drain yet again. This wins us our third round and lets us move on to the semi-finals, where we meet up with an old friend, Tico. He owes us his life and has already lost the battle against me, but he's ready for round 2. But I remember that his team was extremely weak to Rock Slide, so I learned it to Grubby and Talon. I led off the battle with my Mega Evolved Archeles and Rock Slid the first 2 Pokemon to take both of them out. His own Archeles managed to survive one and counter back, which was incredibly scary, but because we were Mega Evolved, we still won the matchup. He brings out the literal devil Pokemon. No, not Giratina, Beliadon. And I swapped in Baja Blast thinking it would be the best matchup against this dark fire type. He Flare Blitzes me and I'm left with literally 1 HP. I don't have Sturdy, no Focus Sash, just an incredibly lucky turn from me. Because of the recall damage, I know I can now one-shot with Drain Punch, which is what happens. His Chimiconda then ended up falling to a Surf from my Brainfish, and he then had a Mega as his ace. I brought in Grubby to lower its attack with Intimidate, but still got hit with a critical hit U-turn. Instead of attacking me again, he used the setup move and weakened Earthquake to win our very final matchup. Which means we've made it to the finals, baby! And we already know our best friend has made it here too. We reminisce about all the times we had together, and in the end we knew it was going to come down to this. We tell Theo how much we admire him for his growth and how far he's come in his journey. And he also says that we're like a role model and rival to him. He knows that both of us have become some of the strongest trainers in the entire region, and this might actually be the moment he beats me. And just when our battle is about to start, the earth starts rumbling, and we think that the volcano that we're standing on is about to erupt. But that's not it at all. It's the legendary Pokemon Actan, and he has been nuclefied. It goes on to attack us, but Theo throws some nuclear balls at us, and we put on our hazard suit ready for battle. This Pokemon can in fact not be captured, so we just take him out with a couple of Earthquakes, but can we just talk about how cool its actual design is? This is a legendary Pokemon for you, ladies and gentlemen. Once it's weakened, we get some help from the gang. Even the 7th gym leader is here. He offers an explanation to why Actan gets so aggressive all of a sudden. You see, Actan has a brother that lives in the mountain underneath his gym. Its name is Lanthan. Despite being asleep for centuries, Lanthan can sometimes speak to its chief's acolytes through its dreams. This probably means he can also speak to Actan. He actually ends up going up to Actan and wakes him up and also purifies him from the radiation, because legendary Pokemon apparently have the power to do that. He says that he's been woken up by another legendary Pokemon which suddenly appeared in its lair, as it began siphoning energy from the rare metals at the heart of Mount Actinite. He tried to defend his territory, but the opponent was too strong and it even made him radioactive and lose control. And so the other Pokemon commanded Actan to attack the area, and now he wants to join me to aid me in this fight against this intruder. As it turns out, there's a ton of crude uranium at the bottom of this pool. We should have known that Curie never left Tandor and just went here to grab more power. That's when another earthquake happens and Curie appears in front of us. She starts laughing hysterically, and she said that the mistake that we made gave them all the time they needed to grab this power and go through with their awful plan. My dad shouts at them to stop because they might kill hundreds, maybe even thousands of people, but she says that the eternal agony that they've suffered is too much to handle and there is only one way to end it, and that's ultimate power and utter annihilation. This person is clearly a psychopath and there is no reasoning with it, so we know we have to battle them one more time. Tell our friends to leave because we'll deal with her, because otherwise they might die, as our radiation suit is once again here to protect us. Curie then notices that my family and friends have left, saying that I'm nothing but a tool to them, but we know better than to believe the words of this psychopath. And then she summons Gamma Urain by her side, and as we approach her ready to battle, she says, "This is it, this is the end, now I am become death." We throw out our Actan against Urain, but he's only a temporary team member, and I gave him the Choice Scarf so that we can definitely outspeed. And we hit him with a single Metal Cruncher, but it's not enough to take down this Titan, and it's able to use a Overheat and obliterate my Actan. Luckily, we have one more Pokemon that's faster, and that's Talon with his Flamethrower, and with that, Urain is defeated, as it seems to be destroyed, and Curie, ready to kill her with my bare hands, falls over in exhaustion as she can't even finish her sentence. Actan flees back into the heart of the volcano, and the Curie suit also seems to be totally destroyed. My father comes along and says, "Zwiggo, you did it, didn't you? You defeated Urain and Curie once and for all. We have just achieved the impossible, but let's see who the monster is behind the mask." As my dad slowly takes it off, he realizes that it's my long-lost mother. This shocks all of us. How can she even be alive? But more importantly, why did she want to kill her own family and friends? face. She doesn't even look any different from the day she disappeared, meaning she mustn't have aged at all. My dad asks Cameron if he knew about Lucille, and asks if he knew if his wife was alive. Cameron always suspected that it might have been a possibility, but now that he's actually seeing it, it all starts making sense in his head. The constant exposure to radiation and the Curie interface must have made her mind gone absolutely nuts, forgetting who her real family was and only caring for Urane, which is the Pokemon she ended up saving that day that the power plant exploded. She didn't just want this Pokemon and her experiment to die, and so they locked themselves up in the same chamber that Theo was in to survive the blast of the power plant, and stayed in there for multiple years until the new uranium arrived, which woke up Urane. And from there, they started their path of destruction together. All this time, my father wanted to see my mother one last time, but this wasn't the way he expected it to be. She needed medical help, so my father and the professor rushed her to the hospital, and when we thought it was all over, Actan comes along once more and jumps on the platform and releases Urane out of his grasp. Theo thinks we have to beat it up once again, but we realize it doesn't seem dangerous anymore at all. It even has the ability to talk to us, as it says hello. His hunger has been stilled and he doesn't want to hurt any more people. He is now free because Actan gave him an unlimited power source, meaning that he doesn't have to go around eating uranium anymore to stay alive. He was afraid for so long, but my mother helped him survive, and eventually the two just needed each other to stay alive, and he needed to destroy everything because the hunger would just never end. He then says he was made in a dark place underground, and every day they came to run tests on him. He tried to reach out, but he couldn't move until that one unfateful day where the Curie interface was made. They build up a significant relationship with my mother and spent almost every day together. And when all the others left, she stayed behind, trapping them in that machine for 10+ years, and the rest of the story we know. He thought that all the other humans were out to destroy him, but he now knows that that isn't true. We were just protecting our friends, just like my mother protected him. And so that's why he wants to join my team. I'm super excited about this, so we let him, and with that, the region is saved. But we still have to become champion, right? Well, Theo has different plans. He is giving up his position as challenger because of what he's seen today. He knows he could have never defeated me. I mean, we fought off 2 legendary godlike Pokemon and saved the region from calamity. Everybody thanks me once again for saving their lives, and we get taken to the Hall of Fame room, where we get crowned as the new champion of the Tandor region. And that, my friends, is the story of Pokemon Uranium.